Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're getting incredibly meta. We aren't just looking at a major global event, we're literally unpacking the architectural blueprint of a documentary script that details a massive strike on Kyiv. This source material we're looking at, it's basically a strict instruction manual, a literal blueprint dictating exactly how to build a compelling, completely objective narrative out of the sheer, raw chaos of war.
The very first instruction in this blueprint is that you absolutely have to start with a cinematic hook. I mean, imagine you've got exactly 1 minute, literally 60 seconds, to grab your audience's attention. So, the blueprint sets this visceral scene of chaos using these short, really punchy bursts, explosions, sirens, darkness, civilians rushing to shelters. No fluff whatsoever. It's just immediate sensory reality. The goal here is to tap right into the viewer's emotions and drop them squarely on the ground in Kyiv before a single drop of analysis even begins.
And that brings us to the pivotal question the blueprint asks us to pose right at the end of that first minute. It's entirely designed to ramp up the tension. You know, once you're hooked emotionally by the sights and sounds of the night, the whole script structure pivots. It demands a question that shifts the audience away from pure shock and into genuine analytical curiosity. How do you actually structure the chaos of a midnight strike into a coherent, objective narrative? Basically, we're asking, okay, you felt the impact. Now are you ready to systematically understand it?
To figure out how all this heavy information is organized, the documentary structure gives us a really clear 6-part roadmap. And we're going to follow this exact agenda today. We'll start with setting the scene, move into the strategic context of Kyiv, break down the timeline of the attack, dive into the weapons and military analysis, look at the global response, and finish up by exploring what happens next.
So part 1, setting the scene. Let's see exactly how this blueprint builds the foundation of the event. Now, notice the incredible balancing act required here. It's honestly like walking a tightrope. The source explicitly demands high tension and vivid visual scenes, but at the exact same time, it strictly mandates total neutrality. Every single uncertain detail has to be framed super carefully. Words like reported, alleged, or according to officials are absolutely mandatory. You cannot just invent facts or guess casualty numbers. The task is to build gripping drama, for sure, but the entire foundation has to be anchored strictly in verified, publicly available info. All right, moving right along to Section 2, Strategic Context of Kyiv. Here, the blueprint zooms out from the immediate chaos to give us some crucial background information. You see, before we dive into the nitty-gritty details of the strike itself, we're instructed to contextualize the event. The audience actually needs to know why Kyiv is the epicenter here. So the script structure carves out a specific segment to explore the strategic importance of the capital city, and it outlines the history of previous attacks. Basically, it places this one single night into the much larger, incredibly complex puzzle of the broader Russia-Ukraine war. It ensures we aren't just watching explosions, but that we're actually grasping the massive geopolitical weight behind them. Which leads us straight into Part 3, Timeline of the Attack. This is where the script structure shifts gears into a highly granular chronological breakdown of the night in question.
The blueprint actually instructs us to track the night through 4 very distinct phases, perfectly mapping out the escalation. Phase 1 kicks off with the arrival of drone waves, essentially the initial probing of the city's defenses. Then, Phase 2 tracks the escalation as actual missile launches are picked up on radar. Phase 3 outlines the massive activation of air defense systems, literally lighting up the night sky. And finally, Phase 4 grounds us right back down with the civilians, detailing the emergency response to the damage on the ground. It creates this relentless ticking clock momentum that just drives the whole narrative forward.
Next up is Section 4, Weapons and Military Analysis. For this part, the blueprint demands a totally cold, objective look at the reported military hardware. The really crucial point here is to objectively catalog the different layers of the attack. We're looking at a comparison between the slower, swarming Shahed drones, the precision of cruise missiles, and then the sheer, devastating speed of ballistic missiles. And the blueprint asks us to contrast all of this offensive hardware directly against the incredibly complex web of air defense systems trying to stop them. It is a fascinating, purely tactical look at the actual mechanics of modern, multi-layered aerial warfare.
But, just listing off the hardware isn't quite enough. The blueprint forces analysts to step back and ask the big, overarching strategic question. Why launch such a massive, multi-layered strike in the first place? Is the goal to exhaust air defense stockpiles? Is it a form of psychological warfare? This specific instruction ensures that our explainer moves way beyond just rattling off technical specs and actually wrestles with the underlying military strategy.
Moving to Section 5, the global response. Here, the documentary structure maps out the sweeping geopolitical fallout that happens immediately after an attack like this.
We are tasked with objectively cataloging reactions from a huge array of global players. The instructions require us to gather responses from Western allies, like the United States, NATO, and the European Union, right alongside statements from the United Nations. But to keep that strict neutrality we talked about earlier, it also mandates including official statements from both Ukraine and Russia, while looping in independent military analysts to keep things grounded. It brilliantly illustrates how a localized strike reverberates almost instantly through international halls of power. And finally, we arrive at Section 6, what happens next. This is where the script blueprint pivots from the immediate aftermath to look out at the horizon.
This section requires us to really discuss the future of the conflict. The blueprint isn't content with just staring at the past, right? It dictates analyzing possible escalation and what that actually means for the overall trajectory of the war. It asks us to weigh the likelihood, or let's be real, the unlikelihood of peace negotiations in the wake of a strike like this. Plus, it touches on the long-term military implications and the broad economic impact. We're talking disrupted supply chains, shaky energy markets, and massive rebuilding costs. It is a truly comprehensive look at the ripple effects.
Now, the source's final instruction for the documentary script is to craft a powerful ending. Up until now, everything's been very analytical, but here, we're told to drop that cold analytical distance just a tiny bit to deliver one memorable final line. The entire goal is to create an emotional, cinematic conclusion that doesn't just summarize the cold, hard facts, but actually resonates on a deeply human level.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative thought. We've seen exactly how a documentary breaks down the anatomy of a strike, but the real question isn't just about how we tell the story of this war. It's about what this story means for our future. As the shadow over Kyiv lifts, will this blueprint of escalation become the world's new normal? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.